Ladies and gentlemen, it's me again. If you would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll be running the meeting under our normal rules that we've done for the past too many years that I care to mention. You should have checked in if you're a registered voter, and you should have gotten a bright pink card. This is what enables you to vote as well as speak. So keep track of this, please. If you leave, take it with you. Don't throw it away here. We're going to go through the warrant, dealing with each article in order. I will state the article number and the subject matter, which cannot be changed, and recognize someone for making a motion and seconding it. After that, whoever made the motion will be able to speak to it and explain it, and then we will open it up to the public voters. Anyone who would like to ask questions, like to make comments. I will remind you that we are all neighbors here, friends, and to be polite and kind to each other. I'm going to start off by asking Cinder if she will introduce the school board, or the front table here.
Good evening. I'm going to start by first introducing our student representative, Caitlin Badney. Moving over from your right to left, there's Lori Peters, Jenna Hardy, Shannon Barnes, Lori Rothaus, our interim chief education officer, Bill Olson, and our district attorney, Kathy Peel. I'm Cinda Guayumi, and behind me I have Kim Yarlett, our assistant superintendent for curriculum, Matt Chevenel, our assistant superintendent for business, and Pat Heinrich, our district secretary clerk. Thank you.
Chuck, you want to introduce your budget committee?
Good evening. I'm Chuck Mower. I'm the chairman of the School District Budget Committee, and I would like to say that we have had a remarkably productive year and a great group of people on the Budget Committee. And I will enumerate them if someone would stand as the name is called, because we are not all here this evening. We have had excused absences. Scott Adler, Shane Albuquerque, Dan Coakley, Lee French, Gina Groff, Carol Lang, Mackenzie Murphy, Gillian Savage, Naomi Schoenfeld, Brian Stisser, and Ellen Wilson. Our school board liaisons were Lori Peters and Jenna Hardy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Before we get any too further here, I would like to ask Jane Coelho if she would stand, please. Yep. Jane has been a supervisor of the checklist for going on a little over 20 years now, officially. Prior to that, she worked for many years as an assistant to then supervisors. She has decided it is time to retire. So I would like to have a round of applause for Jane, thanking her for her many years of service. Sorry, Jane, she didn't know I was going to do that. But it's well-deserved. All right, we're going to move on to the warrant. Article 1 is obviously the ballot vote, which is going to happen at our 3 polling locations on April 12th. Article 2, relative to gifts and legacies. Yes.
I would like to move Article 2 as written.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, would you like to speak to it, please?
Yes, please. This article would allow the Merrimack School Board to accept gifts of personal or real property during the year, such as land. This article appears on the ballot every year to allow the school board to accept property on behalf of the district. If this article was not approved, all non-cash donations would have to come before the voters. This does not negate public discussion by the school board and would still require a vote of the board.
Any further discussion on the motion on Article 2? Seeing no other questions or comments, Article 2 will move to the ballot as printed. Article 3, relative to the bargaining agreement from the Merrimack Teachers Association.
I
Shannon?
move Article 3 as written.
Thank you.
Nice second.
Laurie, that's a second.
I have a second.
Thank you. All right, Shannon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This article seeks to provide a 3.75% increase for only the 22-23 school year for the teachers of Merrimack. It is a one-year only contract as it acts as the beginning of our attempts to become somewhat competitive in the market for professional staff to serve the children of Merrimack. Currently, compared to the 12 districts in our area, and I'll list them, Amherst, Bedford, Bow, Brookline, Concord, Derry, Hollis, Londonderry, Milford, Nashua, Salem, and Wyndham. We, compared to those districts, we are between $4,000 to over $12,000 behind the area average for those districts when you put our salary grid against theirs in various cells. So we compete in those markets for our staff, and we know that that puts us at great risk to take our talented teachers elsewhere for the sake of longevity of their quality of life. Not that they're definitely dedicated to our students of Merrimack, but they also have to think of their family and their homes. So with that, we really need to attract good talent. We need to retain the talent that we have brought to the table. And we have chosen to do a one-year contract because we know that given this opportunity, plus one that we'll be talking about later this evening, we can now take a look after the elections are over, knowing that some of these comparative districts also have teachers' contracts on their ballots, and do a reassessment of the numbers to make sure that we can, again, go into a long-term contract in a more competitive position.
Thank you, Shannon. Anyone have comments or questions relative to this article and motion? Seeing none. Tom, are you coming up? Okay.
Thank you. Tom Koenig, 1 Danforth Road. I guess I'm curious. You said it was 3.75%?
That is correct.
Okay. Is that across the board, or is that being donated to the union and they're presenting the amounts to the various people? Looks like Matt wants to say
Shannon? Matt?
Could you just rephrase your question? I'm getting a little feedback
Shannon?
up here.
I believe Matt has the answer that
That's
Tom's...
fine, but I'd like to know what the question was, Madam Moderator.
I'm just wondering if that 3.75% is being given to all the teachers evenly, or if the amount of the 1.2 million is being given to the union, and then the union is deciding who gets what per raise.
I can answer some of it if Matt wants to supplement. That would also be welcomed. What we are doing is we are collaborating with the MTA, and we have we'll have a mutual agreement on the allocation of the funds to try to close the gaps and make sure that the money doesn't go 3.75 to every cell, but takes care of the highest deltas first, and works our way to to those that have the closer to the delta. So we want to make sure we're closing the biggest gaps first, because each cell would have a varying gap to its market competition. But if, Matt, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to, hi Tom, how are you? Nice to
good,
see you
thank
this
you.
evening. It ranges anywhere from where we want to bring teachers in is at the, obviously, probably the master's degree level with maybe a couple of years experience. So we're putting a lot of the money in that area, so that could be around 5%. But as you go upwards to the scale, it could be 2%, 1.75% when you get into the, step 18, step 19, step 20. So there's a range. So there's more money being put at the lower part of the scale in order to attract teachers so we can hire staff, and then lesser at the top of the scale which is still going to give them, money-wise, an equivalent kind of increase, but the percentage is a little bit lower at that point. So it's not across the board. Across the board doesn't help us in our goal to attract teachers.
All right, it's just, it's not understood by me and others. There were rumors in the past that money was given to the union distributed it, and then the people that were new were still on the very low end of the scale, and some of the other people were higher. So you're saying that you've inverted that. You're targeting more money to the people on the lower end of the scale, just to make sure you can kind of get them up and retain the new people that now have some experience, but not necessarily a lot.
Absolutely correct, sir.
And I would just add that, I'd rather that we worked off data versus rumors when we hear about how salaries are allocated. It's always been a good partnership with the MTA. Whoops, and I seem to have my earring broke. Sorry about that. But we always have a good partnership with the MTA, and we want to continue to collaborate, and we are always looking to make sure that we are retaining and attracting the best staff. We're just looking at the strategy to do that, making sure that it's aligned with the market value.
Well, I asked because there's nothing in this document, and I didn't find anything on the website that explained the information that you've just brought out, and that, I think that's important to me.
I just appreciate, I just want to clarify that, we are absolutely, if there's any questions, we're available to kind of go through any specifics, but I just don't want to, work off of a rumor. We have always been very collaborative and respectful of the work that we have done with the MTA, and we've always been able to review the salary grids before finalizing them with the assigned administrators. So I want to make sure that's clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Chuck, you have the floor.
I'd like to keep this as simple as I can. The wording of warrant articles gets a little complicated now and then, or perhaps always, I don't know. But the objective with this article is that it is a one-shot of expanded employee benefits to bring us up to the middle of the road in our competitive neighborhood. Please, if you just let me finish.
Oh, sure, I didn't know you were finished. Sorry.
Shannon, let Chuck finish, please.
No, I didn't know he wasn't.
It's very simple. Our teachers are underpaid in the area. We have an article that will remedy that, and it spreads the increased pay across an appropriate wage application. One shot. Bring us up to being competitive so that we can actually hire teachers. I hate to have to remind people how difficult it has been to acquire teachers. And there's nothing more valuable and more important in our school district than our teaching staff. The Budget Committee did a thorough review of this article and gave it a unanimous recommendation to the community that it would be in our best interests. That's 12 people, or in this case 11 people, that voted to affirm the investment that this article will make in keeping our teachers at least in the median, middle of the road pay, so that we can compete properly. Thank you very much.
Shannon?
I want to clarify, this is not going to do all of that. What we have before us is going to allow us, as we are, why we have a one-year contract, is because the 3.75% is going to keep us from falling further behind. I think that's a really important thing to distinguish, that without that 3.75% contract passing and not having increases for next year, we would actually fall further behind. There will be a subsequent article we will discuss this evening that will take care of what I think Chuck is getting to, which is trying to close the gap. This is making sure we don't widen it by having that one-year deal that will give that 3.75, which is competitive with what other contracts are offering at this point for annual increases. So we're just trying not to go deeper behind, not actually catching up with this article.
Thank you, Shannon. Anyone else with comments or questions? Matt,
Would
go
you
ahead.
mind? Not to belabor the point, because a lot of times I think less is more. However, this evening, Bedford is voting on a teacher contract, a 3-year contract, first year of which is almost $1.3 million. That's 27 cents on their rate. Ours is 25 cents on their rate. So the amount that we were behind Bedford right now, which was anywhere to $4,000 to $11,000, depending upon which cell you're looking at, especially at the lower level, is going to spread even further with the passage, if this does pass, this 3-year contract that's being proposed in Bedford, which is our main competitor, and a lot of teachers have left us to that district. And so that's something for consideration in order to just kind of try and tread water on this. And the second article that you'll see is something to try and get us closer. But Bedford passed, I'm sure Bedford's going to pass this article for their teachers. And so, we have to really work hard to see if this gets passed for our teachers and to keep us competitive and to keep the personnel that we have, because we have some fantastic individuals that work for the school district. In fact, we have almost 300 of our 353 staff members have a master's plus 15 plus 30 PhD. We have masters or better on well over 75% of our staff right now, and that's something to be proud of. So hopefully we can pass this warrant article and we can maintain some sort of balance between us and surrounding towns.
Thank you, Matt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Article 3 will move to the ballot as printed. Article 4, allowing the school board to call one special meeting if Article 3 fails at the ballot box. Shannon?
Sorry about that. I move Article 4 as written.
And I second that.
Thank you, Jen. Shannon? Brief discussion?
Absolutely.
Explanation?
This article gives the school board the option of calling one special meeting to discuss cost items only in the negotiated agreement, if not passed by the voters. If we do not have this article on the warrant, we would have to petition Superior Court to get approval for a special meeting. And the court only grants such special meetings for emergency purposes. And special meetings would be at like another election cycle for this one issue.
Thank you. Anyone with questions, comments? Seeing none, Article 4 will move to the ballot as printed. Article 5, relative to the collective bargaining agreement between the school board and the Merrimack Teachers Association. Laurie?
Madam Moderator, I move Article 5 as presented.
Thank you. Second? Thank you, Cinda.
Yep, I second.
Laurie, you have the floor.
So this article seeks to provide a market adjustment over Article 3 in the 22-23 school year for teachers of Merrimack. As stated before, compared to 12 districts in our area, those being Amherst, Bedford, Bow, Brookline, Concord, Derry, Hollis, Londonderry, Milford, Nashua, Salem, and Windham, even if Article 3 passes, our teachers will still be behind the average teaching salary of these districts. What this article is trying to do is move our teachers closer to the middle. We need to increase our average pay to be competitive in this job market and retain our teachers. This represents an additional 3% increase.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions from the voters? Tom?
Again, Tom Koenig, 1 Danforth Road. I just want to understand, because there's some confusion in the way I read this. It talks about adding to the base salary beginning in 2022, 2023. But the note says it's a one-time salary adjustment and that it's not cumulative, which would suggest that this is a one-year bonus that's not going to get added to the pay base. But adding it to the base salary sounds like it does get added to the pay base. So I'm trying to understand what the intent is here.
Matt?
Yeah, I think the word cumulative was meant in the spirit of there's not going to be, there's $950,000 that's going to be added to the base salary. That's going to be baked into the teacher contract. Next year, there's not going to be another $950 or another $950. It's not going to accumulate over and over again. That'll be clarified in the voter's guide, but it was just to make sure that people understood that this is not going to be an increase of $950 every single year. It's going to lay into the contract. Whatever, if the Article 3 passes, that will give us one number on the salary schedule. And then if this Article 5 passes, that'll give us another number on the salary schedule. And so that'll be baked into the salary schedule. And it's going to continue, it's not going to compound. Maybe compound would have been a better word, but it wouldn't be cumulative. It wouldn't be added one year to the next year, to the next year, to the next year.
So Article 3 was a one-year contract.
Yes, absolutely.
Article 5 is a one-year additional 3%. That'll get into their salary and won't come back out again. So it'll be there the year after. It just won't
Yes.
it won't be increased another $950,000.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments, questions? Seeing none, we're going to move Article 5 to the ballot as printed and move on to Article 6, relative to the roof replacement at Thornton's Ferry School. And I believe this is Cinda?
Yep. I'm going to move this article, but I'm going to read it first. We've moved as written, but I want to just point out a couple of things. When this article came before the school board and the budget committee, it was $200,000.
Cinda, I need you to just make the motion first, and then we'll go into the
Oh, sorry.
explanation.
All right. I make the motion.
Second.
Cindy, you're going to read the motion, please?
Yes. So I'm reading the motion because it is $200,000 fewer than what we had originally voted on. So the motion is, shall the district raise and appropriate the sum of $1,400,500 for the purpose of roof replacement at Thornton's Ferry Elementary School. And then
Thank you. And we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
And then I will speak to it. This article seeks to replace 38,571 square feet of roof at Thornton's Ferry Elementary School that is in the process of failing. The consequences of not taking such action at this time could be deck rot and the potential for mold in classrooms. Sections C, D, F, G, and H were constructed in 1994 and have been out of warranty since 2009. These sections are built-up roofing of tar and gravel that was applied on top of the original 1970 roof when the school was first constructed. The roof is currently telegraphing potentially urgent problems with the insulation below. There are areas where the morning frost has melted immediately adjacent to unmelted areas. This indicates that the insulation in the melted areas were likely saturated from leakage at the surface. These areas also correspond with the areas where there was leakage into the classroom below. Saturated insulation has no insulating value and can lead to mold problems and damage the metal deck below. We must pass this article to ensure that the current issue does not become an emergency that cannot be taken care of in a controlled fashion during the summer of 2022. I also wanted to note that when the original article came before the school board, we did vote 5-0-0. If this passes as I've just read, we will be meeting immediately after this meeting to revote, recast our votes with the new amount, which is $200,000 less.
So just to clarify, what's printed in the warrant is a warning of subject matter to be discussed. The actual motion that was made was changed from, or was not changed, but the motion that was made for $200,000 less than what was actually printed. So the motion is there for the $1,400,500. So you may want to make a change in your notes there so you know what we've got here.
Thank you.
Okay. They didn't change it. The motion was made. They're not amending it. Chuck?
I'd simply like to add that the previous amount had been recommended by the Budget Committee by a 11-0 vote in favor. And should this prevail this evening, the Budget Committee will be immediately meeting afterwards to change our recommendation as well.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we will move Article 6 to the ballot as the motion was made. Article 7, relative to retaining unassigned general funds.
I move Article 7 as written.
Thank you. And second, Laurie?
Oh, that's me. I'll
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you. Cindy, you want to?
I'll speak to it.
Oh, you, okay.
This article will allow the school board and a public meeting to retain 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment. The net assessment is the amount to be raised by taxes net of all revenues. For example, this year the net assessment was $53,653,239. Therefore, the maximum allowable surplus that could have been retained would be $2,682,000. That amount or a lesser amount would have been subject of a school board vote. From the statute, RSA 198:4-B, Roman numeral 2, it states, a school district by a vote of the legislative body may authorize the school district to retain any unused portion of the year-end unassigned general fund balance, provided that the total amount does not exceed 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment. Prior to spending these funds, the school board shall hold a prior public hearing. Last year, the district, due to COVID shortfalls in hiring and expenses, returned to the taxpayers $8.1 million to reduce the school portion of the tax rate for the 2020-2021 school year. The normal amount that we return is approximately $3 million. This will create a dip with the $8 million and then a spike in the tax rate, having returned to normal operations in 2021-2022. If we had this article last year, the district could have retained a portion of that $1 million surplus to avoid the dips and spikes in the tax rate in the future. It could also use these funds for any emergency purposes after a public hearing and a school board vote. Additionally, the school board at any time could vote to return those surplus funds as well back to the taxpayers. As a comparison, the town of Merrimack has the ability to retain surplus, as all towns are afforded that mechanism to avoid peaks and valleys to the tax rate and to be able to meet their obligations. For 2021, they used $1.6 million to reduce the town portion of the tax rate and are retaining $7 million. As a rule of thumb, the Government Finance Officers Association recommends that a town retain enough surplus to support no less than 2 months of regular general fund operating expenses. The town of Merrimack is operating under prudent best practices and should be acknowledged for their foresight and fiscal stability. The school district would like to have the same option as afforded to all towns in New Hampshire.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to this or have questions? Andy?
Andy Hunter, 15 Mountain View Drive. My question is, does the school board have a plan to build up this fund balance over time? if next year the school board takes $2.5 million out of the surplus and puts it in this fund balance, it's going to create a spike on the tax rate. And if we give the school board this authority, I would like to know that they're going to use it responsibly and build it up over time versus 1 year.
Can I?
Matt?
Good evening, Mr. Hunter. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Matt.
Yeah. We cannot build it up any more than 5% of the net assessed valuation. So right now that figure is 2.6. We can't build it up to 3.6, 8.6, whatever it is. This is just me talking, right? Last year we had an $8 million surplus. That was because we didn't have staff, we didn't have paras, we were missing teachers. It was a horrid year, and it generated a surplus, which was good because it gave the taxpayer relief. If we're going to bring in another $4 million surplus because we're going from 8 to 4, that's going to have to be made up by taxes, right? So it would be, I don't mean to talk for the board, but it'd be my recommendation for next year, if that's the case, I wouldn't withhold anything because that would further enhance the spike. I would give it all back. But if we find ourselves in the future in another situation like last year, it would have been nice to hold $1 million, $1.5 million perhaps, in order to utilize that to offset the spike that may be coming if we don't bring in $8 million.
And
that's the philosophy behind this.
And Matt, you hit my point exactly. That's
Absolutely.
what I would like to see from the board, is that disciplined process of when there's an opportunity, let's build up this fund, and when it's going to cause a spike for the taxpayers, we return it to the taxpayers.
You can't, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck, your turn.
I believe this offering had its genesis in the Budget Committee's unanimous vote to ask the school board to create capital reserve planning finances for the district. I am not privy to how that decision was received or undertaken, other than this was an article that appeared. No capital reserve funding. Now, obviously, there's a direct correlation between this article and the need to capture and retain funds for future projects. And when I say future projects, the school district has a lot of future projects to undertake if you take a look at the capital improvement program. So this article is not entirely to simply smooth out the tax rate experience. The difficulty with us having larger surpluses is that the money is already raised and appropriated, which means when we return it to the town of Merrimack, in theory, the school portion of the tax rate is affected by what we return. But that's an oversimplification of what can actually take place. I'm here on behalf of the Budget Committee to once again ask for and hope that you will receive in some affirmative way the ability to create capital reserve funds for our capital projects that we already know we must undertake, or that we seem to have forgotten about, such as a supervisory union building, which was an emergency 15 years ago. And we haven't heard anything since it failed to gain a 3/5 majority in a past school district meeting. Money that the voters approve at school district meeting needs to be raised and appropriated. Giving it back is a convoluted inefficiency when we could have a more straightforward capital reserve funding to meet our future needs, and our future is directly ahead of us. So I would support this article, but we need more. Please consider that.
Thank you, Chuck. Don't go too far. Tom?
Thank you. Tom Koenig, 1 Danforth Road. I understand that the town has capital reserve funds, and all of those funds have names and titles and specific amounts that those monies can be, or specific items that those monies can be spent for. We also have a general fund that you referred to, which I appreciate your comments, because the town is responsible for making sure that the school district and the county get money throughout the year, and we can't wait until June or to the end of June or till December to be able to come up with that money. It has to go out monthly. And so we need to have a certain surplus to be able to work those payments. And I see Matt agreeing with me. What bothers me about the way this is worded is it doesn't say anything about what the school district is going to do with up to 5% of the net assessments. And while you stated that you have to have a public hearing, I would submit that not very many people pay a lot of attention to public hearings. That's just a factor of life. The town council has had quite a number of them recently and had absolutely nobody from the public show up. And then a vote of the school board to spend the money. So it sounds like you're going to retain 5% of 53 million potentially, and you could spend it on anything you want as long as you have a public hearing and the school board approves it. That seems kind of open-ended to me. I would much prefer to see you have something like a capital reserve that says we're going to spend it on roofs, or we're going to spend it on, whatever is appropriate, a new superintendent building. But to just have it be a kind of a blank check that you could spend if you have a public hearing seems a little bit loose to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Brian?
Brian Stisser, 56 Middlesex Road. So the first comment about the spiking the tax rate, and as well as the school board having a blank check to spend the money, I think it's important to stress that this would be surplus from funds that have already been raised and appropriated. So this isn't the school board deciding to spend money out of the blue. This is money which was raised and appropriated and then not spent after it had already been raised and appropriated. So this isn't giving the school board the power to raise the tax rate. This is giving the school board the power to keep the money that has already been raised and appropriate to use at a future date for an as yet unknown purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Shannon?
I just wanted to talk to the spirit of this article. And at this point, the school board, and the reason it's timely now is prior to now, with this type of fund, the school board was not able to be the agent to expend. It would be a petition to the Department of Education under very specific guidelines that weren't necessarily things like stabilizing the tax rate. That said, the first step in any plan is to establish a baseline. And not having this vote in place means that we can build all the capital reserve funds we want, but we have no money to put to it unless we do it in individual warrant articles. So again, as you were talking about putting funds for things like roofing, paving, emergency repairs, which Superstorm Sandy definitely dipped into it, and we've been trying to replenish that at a couple $100,000 a clip. But being able to have this fund and be able to ask for money as we need it will allow us to do that. So again, one of the things can be stabilizing the tax rate with it. But, again, we have to have the ability to keep the funding before we actually establish those programs to house the funding. So, but first things first. This is first things first.
Thank you, Shannon. Anyone else with comments, questions?
Lynn, could I do a
Yeah, go ahead,
quickie?
Matt.
I shouldn't be hogging the microphone like this, but, you're here and I'm here, so I might as well speak, right? I spent 24 years as an assistant superintendent for finance, 2 for Jaffrey Ringe and 22 in Merrimack. Before that, I was the finance director on the town side for the town of Hooksett for 8 years. So I've been in Mr. McCally's shoes. I have done retainage going back 30-something years, and we never viewed it as a fund that is meant to spend on anything other than an emergency purpose or a cash flow purpose. We don't have the cash flow because the town is obligated to pay us a certain amount every single month, which they do, and we appreciate that. They retain the surplus to maintain their cash flow, so they don't have to take out tax anticipation notes at all. I don't think they've ever had to do that here. We're looking at this from my standpoint as a mechanism to get rid of the peaks and valleys and not an open pocketbook. If we want to spend money and we want to create capital reserve funds for those, I believe that we should do it for a specific purpose, and it should stand on its own merit. I don't view this fund as something that we just dip into willy-nilly as we feel like it. I view it as something for tax rate stabilization and for some sort of emergency that may come if we choose to retain any kind of surplus, depending upon the conditions and how it'll affect the tax rate. That's just me talking from having done this for a long time and just trying to convey that philosophy to you guys here.
Thank you, Matt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Article 7 will move to the ballot as printed, and I will recognize Chuck Mauer for the purpose of making a motion relative to the operating budget.
I move Article 8. Shall the district raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $83,439,166. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $83,174,461, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the district or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 5-0-0, recommended by the budget committee, 11-0-0.
And do we have a second, Chuck? Brian, was that a second? Thank you.
We had a particularly robust participation on the Budget Committee this year. A lot of people really digging in, doing a deep dive, reporting back, and the deliberations were both interesting and productive, resulting in this proposed operating budget. The attributes of this operating budget is that it is nearly a level budget. The proposed budget is up 1.48% from last year. Increases are mostly due to rising costs of utilities. However, there are costs associated with social and emotional learning, as well as implementation of a new co-curricular programming. Both of those elements were well received and embraced by the Budget Committee. We have great hope in how they will apply to the advancement of learning in our school district. The Budget Committee added a new purpose to the budget, $10 for demolishing the Brentwood building, so-called, should funds become available. The school board can transfer money into the line and do the deed. The Budget Committee and the School District Planning and Building Committee both think the building should have been demolished at least 3 years ago. And I have to say that there was unanimity on the Budget Committee, and quite frankly, amongst many of the residents of the community that I have had contact with, that essentially says enough is enough. This is a white elephant around our neck costing us more money than we need to be supporting with any more budgetary requests. So we hope that the school board at its first opportunity will find within the budget enough money to raise the Brentwood building. And my understanding from the town of Merrimack is that they stand ready to help us in that endeavor and receive all of the demolition materials at our transfer station, thus reducing the cost of such an enterprise by a considerable margin. The budget is a fair and supportive budget for the school district, which provides the staff, equipment, and supplies needed for education in the town of Merrimack to move forward. As I mentioned earlier, we have much to do in the immediate future. And the approval of this budget will help us take the next small step forward in accomplishing those things that we already know are capital needs in our district. The Budget Committee unanimously recommended this article, and we stand by it with a great deal of pride. The difference between the operating and the default is less than $300,000. I think that's quite a testament to trying to meet everybody's needs and balance the effect it will have across our community. I remain available for any questions.
Thank you, Chuck. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the article related to the budget? Seeing none, it will move to the ballot as printed, and I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second? Down. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, It's been a pleasure. Tomorrow night, same time, same place, we've got the school district meeting going through everything the town meeting. And then on April 12th, please remember, elections. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Stay safe.